Why don't you should change that to Mr. T.
What?
It just says MT when you before your video connects.
Oh my God, I'm Mr. T. I am Mr. T.
What? That's awesome. I mean, I pity the fool who. It's funny,
All right.
actually. It makes me think of like in a bunch of Harmontowns, Dan Harmon does his Ice-T impression,
Uh-huh.
and when someone is talking to him as Ice-T, they always like try to refer to him as Mr. T, to which he objects because that's another guy.
Uh, Dan Harmon impersonating Ice-T is something I never would have thought existed.
So good, so good.
Cool. Now
It's
I'm
not
recording.
personal; it's business. It's like I don't know. He does what he does anyway.
My life is completely not random right now
Right?
because it is so regimented. I have strict report times. I'm spending hours in training. Like I had an 11-hour day yesterday.
Oh,
And it's fine when it's hands-on stuff. Hands-on stuff is really cool and fun, putting out fires, evacuating planes. But a lot of them are also PowerPoints. There's a lot of PowerPoints. And so like yesterday I had 11 hours of PowerPoints.
I don't do well
It
at
was
that.
Yeah, it's like a lot of it is like FAA mandated. There's like stuff that they have to, like the FAA requires them to give all this huge amounts of information.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just kind of, those days are intense. Like that, just
Yeah.
that many PowerPoints back to back. But then, you need it for the exam. So,
Well, the funny thing is, like with my ADD or ADHD or whatever the fuck it is, I can't focus on something like that unless I am doing something that makes it look like I'm completely not paying attention at all. So like the only way, like I had a bunch of teachers in college that got really mad at me because I would sit there and draw instead of taking notes. And, nobody ever understood the fact that like, look, if I'm looking at you and your presentation, I'm then distracted by some thing about your shirt or, and my mind
right.
starts to wander on those things. But if I can do something to occupy my, the forefront of my mind, I can actually take in all that information. Welcome to Your Aleatoric Reality, the podcast where sometimes future Damon has to punch in and say that because we forgot to fucking say it while we were recording this. So anyway, back to the podcast. Did you see these?
Ooh. Damon is showing me the various jumbo D20s he's made.
Yep.
Are they all D20s?
Yep. It's
Nice.
20 millimeter, 30 millimeter, 40 millimeter, 50 millimeter.
And it looks like the 50 millimeter is maybe a prototype for the medals for the Dice Olympics.
Yep.
Nice.
Sure. I'm also
I did
doing some countdown dice as well for that. Well, that came up as part of like with that game that I'm working on.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, it would really suck to have a piece of paper and like be check marking. And I was going to work with you to do a little app. That would be cool.
Uh-huh.
But I thought also countdown dice might be
Now, you've made D20s that the numbers are sequentially side by side to each other?
yeah. So like what you start with the one and then, it's usually like up and to the right is the next number, but you have to face all the numbers so it follows a path.
Right, because normally on a die, you have like opposites will add to the same number. Like 20 will be opposite of 1, and then 19 will be opposite of 2, and they're kind of like all mixed around. But then those are hard. Like when you're keeping score or like hit points or whatever on a die, it gets hard because then you have to like look around at every face to find out where the next number you want is.
Exactly.
So it's like actually a different design for the die to have it be a counter because you have sequential numbers next to each other. Once again, I am saying this for listeners because I know you, Damon, already know this.
I know what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Just wanted to.
But I did countdown D20s and actually a D12.
Nice.
Yep. And I was going to do a 24, but it seemed excessive.
What about a D10?
D12.
Well, yeah, but what about a D10?
I could do a D10 too.
I asked that because in Steve Jackson Games' Munchkin,
Mm-hmm.
you use a die to keep track of your level. And when you
Uh,
get to level 10, you win. And so sometimes I use a D12 because I have more of those than D10s. But then again, you have the problem of like, well, where's the next number? I have to look all around.
Yep.
If I had the sequential D10, that would be really good for Munchkin.
Well, so let me ask you this. Do you start off at level 0 or level 1?
You start off at level 1
Okay.
and go up to
that
level
was
10.
my conundrum in making the countdown dice. Is traditionally, they just go from 20 to 1, right? Or 1 to 20 or whatever. But I was like, wouldn't it make more sense for it to have a 0?
For the countdown?
Yeah, otherwise you can't count down.
But then you would be starting at 19.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
So
that's why
you need a 21-sided die.
well, no, but that was why I was considering doing the 24-sided die instead. So it would be 23 to 0. But
Then you've got a William Burroughs connection automatically
oh yeah.
because you're starting at 23.
All right.
You know about that. That's where that comes from, right? Like all the whole like 23 being the mysterious mystic number of doom
I thought it was
comes
just
from William
chromosomes.
Burroughs. That comes from William Burroughs.
Oh, is that how old he was when he did the apple trick?
No, he was in a bar and heard there was a guy that was like a tugboat captain or something. His name was Captain Clark, and he said, I've been a tugboat captain for 23 years. And I've never had an accident. He was like yelling. He was like drunk, and he was yelling to the whole bar, like, can you believe it? I've been a tugboat captain for 23 years. I've never had an accident. And that day he went out and had an accident in his boat. And I think sank the boat.
Yeah.
And the next day in the newspaper, William Burroughs saw a news article about a plane crash that was piloted by a different captain also named Clark, and it was flight number 23.
Oh, creepy.
And so he just it really struck him that like yesterday this guy was bragging about 23 years with no incident. There was an incident, and then there's this crash of flight 23, but both guys are named Captain Clark. This is this weird cosmic connection. So he decided the number 23 was the number of like weird cosmic coincidences. And that's the source of that, as far as I know.
I made a D20 snowman.
He might have made all that up.
Burroughs never.
Okay, well, let's roll for a thing.
All right, things.
Shall we? A thing to talk about. Why don't you roll your D5?
Because we already know it sucks.
Well, I rolled a 4 and I got the creativity episode with the Brian Eno deck and the creative whack pack and whatnot.
Okay. So, and that's why you want me to roll.
Well, because I have 5 topics and I rolled with a D8.
Oh,
I got a 4, but like what I had to like as soon as I was rolling it, I was like, I was gonna have Damon roll because he actually has a D5. I don't have one with me.
yeah. Well, D10. You don't have a D10 either.
I mean, I already rolled.
You carry an 8 and a 12, right? Wasn't that what?
With me here in Utah, I have a D8, a D12, and a D6. That's all I brought. One of each.
I have all the die.
So, do you have prepared material on Oblique Strategies?
Some.
I think if we're going to do this, we have to use the Oblique Strategies to guide the episode.
Okay. Well, is it only Oblique Strategies? Because I have as a topic creativity tools and then several other approaches to that.
Yeah, I think was Eno's the first. I think Eno's was the first.
Probably.
Historically.
I mean, I don't ever believe anything's the first.
I think we should start with Eno's deck and then go from there if we have more time, or we can slough it off to a future episode because there are definitely multiple tools like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you want to do an intro of it? Do you want me to, or do you just want to start using it?
Go for it. Yeah, I was looking to see if they listed that as having a source that he based it on, but they don't.
Yeah. So for those who don't know Brian Eno, let's just talk about Brian Eno a little bit. Brian Eno is.
For those of you that think you don't know Brian Eno, you do.
Well, you probably know way more about him than I do, being more of a music historian. But Brian Eno is a musician and producer. That's what I got as an intro on Brian Eno. No, I think he's credited with starting the concept of ambient music.
In electronica, yeah. And has definitely been prolific in that. In fact, the funny thing is, I just as an aside, I saw something with him the other day where he started this radio station of just his music, and it's just a streaming thing. But he included everything he's ever recorded, including things that he never released.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he had like he said how long it was, like, and it was like, something like a month of music or something like that. It's just ridiculous. But he was also in Roxy Music.
Well, I'm looking at this now. I'm getting some notes on Eno, and so he did like experimental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we should probably see if we can find a clip of something experimental that he was like early in his career. But yeah, right before you said that, I just got to the part where he co-founded Roxy Music, which I had no idea. I was more of a Brian Ferry fan in high school when he went solo. But yeah, co-founded Roxy Music, which their big hit from the 70s was Love is the Drug, which is the only popular song I know of that ends on a major 6 chord.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed that before?
No.
When they say love is the drug at the end, it's a major 6 chord. It's the tonic, but they have a major 6 in it.
Interesting.
And I noticed that probably 30 years ago, and I've had an ear out for like other pop songs that end on a major 6, and I have not heard of any.
Interesting.
I'm sure there are jazz songs that do that, but
well, yeah,
not popular like rock music. So he's a musician guy. He started experimental. He did some hits with Roxy Music, and then he started doing solo projects in which he's always been kind of a cutting edge guy. Doing electronic music before other people were doing it, but he was in a position to like publish it, right?
Well, he's most famous for his collaborations. I mean, David Byrne, David Bowie, Devo, a lot of new wave / no wave type stuff, and that's as a producer and a musician.
Right. And then he also worked a lot with Robert Fripp, right? From King Crimson. And then we get into the Frippertronics connection, which could mire us deeply back in the whether improv is random argument. Because I think the way Robert Fripp did it did have a lot more randomness in it than your typical improv.
The only improv that I will get behind that is not random, and I'll take this for jazz too, is if you have a predetermined song that you're just wanking over, that's not random, but if the music evolves organically and as a whole, that's randomness.
Right. I agree with you. And just to break it down further for listeners, the difference we're making is whether like you have like in jazz, you have this set of chord changes that the melody of the song goes over the head, and then the rest of the band keeps playing that arrangement of chords while you pick notes within that paradigm to play in whatever order you feel. You're improving over the changes, but that's still within this tight chord structure. And then the other side of that, where you're like probably on the less palatable side of music, where people get together with no preconceived song or chord structure and they just start playing stuff. And
together.
But not a jam band, because like a jam band will still get into like the guitar player will start doing like 3 chords.
Yeah, so 1, 4, 5.
Singer will start like riffing over it, and the drummer will be keeping a strict rhythm. But when you're doing very free form, not to get too deep in music history because we haven't even gotten to the card deck yet, but like Ornette Coleman type of harmonics, where you're not paying attention to key or music theory. In fact, there are people, Miles Davis even accused Ornette Coleman of really knowing nothing at all about music, which I don't think is true.
Right.
But a lot of his albums or at least some of the pieces that he did were very like he wanted to break away from any concept of melody, rhythm, and chord structure. And that then you're getting more into, if we're going to say that this is a spectrum of determinism to randomness, that he's sliding way along the scale towards randomness in his harmonics. And that's the kind of thing that Fripp did as well.
Well,
And
that's kind of funny though, because I was just thinking in my head about our conversation about determinism, and I was thinking about how like really good random improv is actually deterministic because it only happens because of the thing that happened right before it and musicians responding to that.
Right, because well, you do respond to the cues of the people around you, but you're also trying to throw in things that don't follow. Like when you're getting into real, I used to call it alkaloid jazz. That was the term that I coined. That I was really hoping would catch on, but I never made a big enough splash. But I used to call it alkaloid jazz. The idea that I am going to deliberately break away from chords, melodies, any kind of musical knowledge, and throw a monkey wrench into everything. Whether it's people playing with me, getting into a groove, or me getting into a groove, trying to deliberately break that at various points.
Yeah, I mean the same like for like with my old band D&D, when I would try to, people would just be like, "How do you?" Because you're improvising completely. There's no predetermined anything, and how do you make it sound good and and evolve? Because it goes through all these movements and all this stuff, and how do you even do that? And I the only way I could ever think of to describe it was like when we're playing together, there's a color in the air that is the color of the music we're playing right then. And if it's purple, I try to make it more blue or more green or you know what I mean? Like, and that was the only way that I could describe that process because it was really that abstract because you're inserting and affecting and then responding, and then there's responses to the response. And, it's I can't describe that in musical terms.
Right. Yeah, it's tricky when you're trying to break out of a rut. It's difficult, which segues nicely to the Oblique Strategies deck,
which segues forcibly to
to the thing I wanted to talk about. So, Brian Eno, this experimental, cutting edge musician guy, created a deck of cards called Oblique Strategies. And he actually originally had a subtitle called Over 100 Worthwhile Dilemmas. And it's just a deck of cards that they're all text, right? I don't think they even have pictures. Creative Whack Pack, which we might or might not get to in this episode, is a German creativity deck that actually has pictures on it. And a lot of the newer ones along those lines have pictures. I'm pretty sure Oblique Strategies is just text. I'm going to get one right now.
So here in what I'm looking at is in 1970, Peter Schmidt, who was a friend of Brian Eno's, created the Thoughts Behind the Thoughts, which was a box of 55 sentences printed onto disused prints that he accumulated in the studio. And then independently, Brian had come up with a similar project, and then they got together and kind of merged the two.
Right. So we can also credit Peter Schmidt with this because these two guys came up with this kind of idea independently, found that they had a lot of similar ideas, and it's actually really great that Brian Eno is such a good collaborator. Because I know many artists are not. I've always been a terrible collaborator, which has probably been part of the difficulty with this show. Luckily, you like me enough to go along with my stuff most of the time. But anyhow, yeah. So Schmidt and Eno joined forces. So I have there's an app that you can get. I don't have the physical card deck, but I do have the Oblique Strategies app on my phone, and I just pulled one. So to give you an example of something that might be on one of these cards, it says, "What are you really thinking about just now? Incorporate." So the idea is you're in a creative project, you kind of need a nudge, and then you pick one of these cards and it gives you, which is why it's called Oblique Strategies. It's kind of like a lateral thinking strategy that you can use to get past your creative block.
It's a synthesis. So it's a form of synthesis. Like you have these ideas, but you're stuck so let's grab a random thing to synthesize in and create a new thing, thereby breaking the pattern.
Yeah. That one's kind of a problem for me because as soon as I stop to think, what am I really thinking about right now? I'm like, I'm thinking about wondering what I'm thinking about.
Right, right.
And then I just can't get past that. So I don't know what I was really thinking when I pulled that card. I was just thinking like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to get. And I have this, these notes on Brian Eno that I'm looking at. How are we going to incorporate that? I don't know. What were you really thinking about just then?
I don't know. I was kind of listening more than anything, but I see these are some of the ones that I really liked from the deck that kind of jumped out at me that would be interesting in these kind of scenarios. So like try faking it. It's a really great one.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're always doing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Honor thy error as a hidden intention.
That's honor thy error as a hidden intention. That's kind of like Bob Ross's happy accident, right?
Yep, exactly.
Like you make a brush stroke in your painting that you didn't intend to make, rather than getting upset about it. Just like, okay, well, let's pretend that was intentional and see where that goes. Let's develop that into something. When you make a mistake, you can just like develop it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a total. So there's, how many cards are there?
I think the original deck was 55.
Yeah. And so the idea is you just, pick a card, look at it, and it gives you some kind of like, it's almost like a listener challenge.
It is.
It gives you a little statement. You have to kind of interpret it, figure out how you're going to use it.
Look closely at the most embarrassing details and amplify.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Not building a wall, making a brick.
But right now you're just listing them instead of using them.
Oh, I know. No, I mean, well, yeah, true.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what I was really thinking about.
We just find that obviously that's what you were really thinking. Cool. So Brian Eno released this deck in 1974, I think. They released it.
75. Well, no, Schmidt was published in 70. Yeah, they first published in 75.
Yeah. All right. And then how did people use this deck? Was it widely sold, or was it kind of like a niche thing?
I don't know. Coldplay used it.
Oh, did they?
While recording with Brian Eno.
So Coldplay used the cards when they were recording Viva La Vida, or Viva La Vida, or Death and All His Friends, which was produced by Brian Eno. You just said that, but I had to say it again because I was reading it at the same time. Yeah, well, that's wild because, like, so I don't know what you think about Coldplay, but the song Viva La Vida, it strikes my soul in a way that I can't explain.
They always just were like shitty Radiohead to me.
I don't think I've heard, or like I couldn't name another song that they do.
Yeah.
But that one song, Viva La Vida, I listen to that song and it just like, it's very spiritual and deep to me for some reason. And it's intriguing to me because I've listened to it and I've looked at it and I've tried to analyze it and I can't put my finger on it. It's just like a kind of a hokey song, but it really hits me in a way that is intriguing to me. And now that I know that they use a little bit of randomness to create that album, I feel better. I feel better about it.
I think that's because they drew one of the cards which says, make something meaningful to Misha.
That is one of the cards. Yeah. Yeah. Every now and then I get an email out of the blue from somebody saying, hey, I don't know who you are, but Brian Eno told me I should do something for you.
I love this.
Happens all the time.
MGMT has said they had a deck of Oblique Strategies in the studio, but they, quote, don't know if they used them correctly.
Well, I don't think there is a correct way to use them.
Exactly.
I think the point of them is that they make you stop and think and try to interpret what it means. Because I pulled another one and it said consult other promising sources. So that's going to lead me to look for another promising source.
The one thing that's interesting while you're doing that, just looking over this, is that Bowie used them in the studio, and that strikes me as odd because, as far as I understand it, the way that David Bowie's music is recorded is a bunch of people without him make up the music. He comes in, scats something into a microphone off the top of his head in one take, and he leaves.
I think you have a very cynical view of David Bowie.
No, I think that's awesome. If that was like, think about that. Like, if all of David Bowie's music was created without him, he walked in, made up some lyrics over top of it, sang them into a microphone once, and then left. That's fucking brilliant.
I I don't know that that's true. You're the only person I have ever heard that from. I mean, Bowie plays guitar and saxophone. Like he knows music.
But
He writes songs. Maybe he didn't write every part of every song he recorded, but he.
I'm specifically speaking to like the heavy cocaine years of David Bowie. The
Wait, weren't all of them heavy cocaine years?
well, not the Laughing Gnome part of David Bowie. More
That was before.
I don't think there's no cocaine on that album. I don't think, but
All right. Well, be that as it may, we don't know the details of David Bowie's personal substance habits, nor should we. That's between him and his family.
Yep.
It's between nobody now.
Yep.
I
mean, if you
sadly
believe he really
left us.
died.
He did, and honestly, the video for Black Star was such a masterpiece.
Yeah, especially that nobody but him that was involved in the making of it knew he was dying.
Well, his son probably did. Didn't his son direct the video?
Oh, I forgot about that. But
Yeah.
I mean, he barely told anyone.
Right. Yeah, but he knew, like just watching that and hearing the lyrics, knowing that he knew that was the last thing that he was going to do.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Yeah. And then Lazarus too. Overall, I'm not super impressed with the whole album of Black Star, but the song Black Star and the song Lazarus, I think are among his like top greatest masterpieces.
Oh, here we go. 1975 edition had 113 cards. This I just found a list of the publication history of Oblique Strategies.
Cool.
And then it was published in several languages. The fourth edition in 1996 was reduced to 100 cards. And then all the way up to when he gets into the digital versions, it gets up to like 208, 213. And then the iPhone version, which is the last version that was published in 2024, is 151 cards.
Yes.
So that's that. But no,
I didn't find any promising sources. Every result that I was looking at was just another like JavaScript implementation of the deck of cards.
Oh yeah.
I already have that on my phone. I don't need more collections of the same set of statements.
I remember, I don't have it in front of me, but I remember somebody was talking about the Nintendo Game Boy version, and people found it impossible to use because he added Game Boy music to it, and like it just made a bunch of people angry. But so like I'm trying to make music. I don't want to hear music.
People will get angry at anything.
True.
They really will. But so I guess that's all we have to say about the Oblique Strategies deck. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, but I've also, when I was surprised when researching this at how few, examples of using it I found. It's like, okay, this is a cool concept, but, nobody really actually talks about how they used it.
Right. Well, I'm looking at some like possibilities that people could use the deck. And other than like the obvious ones, like you have writer's block when you're trying to write a novel, or you're like, working on a song and you need to, get over a creative block or whatever. More like unconventional ways that you might use it is like you're feeling overwhelmed by a work project. Mm-hmm. Get yourself a Oblique Strategies card. And it's essentially it's a tool for lateral thinking. Mm-hmm. It will ask you a question or give you a directive that's completely unrelated to the thing you're thinking about, and let you look at it from the side or walk in from a different angle, or maybe think of something else first and work your way there.
Right.
Which is kind of how.
I mean, the music The only reason why the association is made to music is because of who Brian Eno is. There's nothing about the deck that implies in any way that it's to be used for music.
Right.
It's
Not
just
at
to be
all.
used for creativity.
Yeah. And when you will see the thing is too, when you say creativity, a lot of people immediately think you're just talking about the arts.
No, creativity is.
But creativity
yeah.
is any problem solving. Any problem solving, any problem that you have, this is a tool that can help you to expand the way you're thinking about it. And the more possibilities you have to think about, the more options you have. And that's what makes you a better problem solver. The more options you have, the more power you have to overcome challenges. Exactly. So here's another idea, like unable to decide on a career change or a career opportunity. You know, and actually really anything anybody might consult a tarot deck about.
Sure.
You could go to the Oblique Strategies because it's clearer. With a tarot card, you get like, this is the Six of Swords, and it's about the journey on water. Well, how does that relate to my problem at work? Right. You can still use it that way. You can still get there, but I feel like the Oblique Strategies is just a little more direct. If you having trouble thinking about a potential career change, and then you get the card that says, don't be afraid of things because they're easy to do. Like, I wasn't going to do, maybe I was, the whole reason I was worried about this whole flight attendant thing was because I was worried that people were going to think it's beneath me, but halfway through the training now, I think I'm going to really enjoy it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be good at it. I'm gonna get to travel a lot. I think I'm gonna really enjoy it, and it, because it uses less brain power than my last job did, is not a reason for me to feel like it's not something that I should do. Which I had already come to that, but now you just saw this in real time where I didn't think about it in that way until I saw that Oblique Strategies card. I'm like, that expresses exactly why, like, people have been, there's been people kind of critical, including you, a little bit critical of this life path, because it's not using my, programming mind. It's not, a huge like skill buster for me, but that's like Brian Eno just said, don't be afraid of something just because it's easy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
Cool. What if you're planning a dinner menu? You have people coming over for an event and you're like, what am I going to make? Get an Oblique Strategies card. Maybe you'll get the one that says
pasta.
Do we need holes? Do we need holes is a card in this deck. And that says to me, I'm making tortellini. I'm making donuts for dessert. I'm making things with holes in them.
There you go.
And now you have a theme for your dinner party. So there you go. There's some examples.
Awesome.
Let's issue a listener challenge. I think there's an obvious one.
Yep. The obvious one. We should do
the obvious one.
Yep.
Get yourself.
Eat a pizza.
You can put a hole in it first.
Right.
Get a cookie cutter. Put a hole in the middle of your pizza. There you go. That's your no. You can order the cards, or you can get the phone app. I think the phone app costs like $3 or $4. If you're afraid to pay $3 or $4 for a phone app, there are all these websites that I found that just have it. You can just go and get yourself an Oblique Strategies card, but use it for some problems that come up or some challenges, or just, hey, let me just experiment with thinking about something that I do routinely in a different way for once. Shake up your morning routine, or, change the way you drive to work. Get yourself an Oblique Strategy card and
actually
put it to use in your life.
The web version is still up on Wayback Machine. It still works. I just pulled it up and I got the card. Ask people to work against their better judgment.
There you go. So even if you think it's a terrible idea to use randomness in your real life, Damon's card just told you to do it anyway.
Yeah, this is cool because it's just the whole website is a card. That's all. There's nothing else on the page.
Peace out. Love you guys.
Later.